Welcome to Are You Bacon? Let's talk For All Mankind. For All Mankind is produced by Ron D. Moore, the producer of Battlestar Galactica, one of the greatest shows of all time, Outland, and Star Trek Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. The story of For All Mankind, it's an alternative history story. The Russians beat us to the moon. Now, in this series, that sets off a series of events. It really is the driving force behind the series. Basically, that causes a political and social crisis within NASA and the US government, really pushes them to try to beat the Russians to the next big thing. The way they handle the rush drives a lot of the problems that occurred throughout the first season. It's very believable, some of the accidents and mistakes that are made because of this rush. And it really is good writing the way they handled it. One of the things I really love about the show is how they seem to capture the time it starts in. It starts around the same time as America lands on the moon. It really captures the feelings of the space race and the patriotism and how the astronauts are national heroes, and it really carries that forward beyond the initial space race and the space excitement that occurred around the moon landing. And it really carries it into the late 70s and even in season 2 into the 80s. The show does an excellent job of developing the characters on the show and having their stories intertwine with the stories of the space race and later the Cold War. It's really an excellent blending of technical and political and personal stakes and drama. The show focuses a lot on the astronauts, their families, and how it affects them, how being gone affects them. You see the stresses that it puts on the families. Show does an excellent job of showing what really motivates these pilots. It's the love of flying. You really get the sense that if they can't be flying, they're not going to be happy. And that's why they're willing to risk their lives, their marriages, everything on a chance to go to the moon and to go back to the moon. It really is a great character study, and all the actors and actresses in the show do a good job of making all the decisions believable, all the reactions believable. One of the things I love how the show handles is how this alternate timeline affects small things, not only politically, but as far as technology goes. Without spoiling anything, there are people who are in different locations, so maybe someone different is elected president in a different year, maybe sooner than they originally were, or maybe later. You see people who, because they were called away because of a crisis, didn't have a career-ending mistake happen, and allows them to be a larger historical figure than they were in real life. And the show, it has these things, but it doesn't shove it down your throat. It's kind of in the background. A lot of people probably won't know they're actually presenting that fact unless you know the real history of what happened. Some things are as subtle as John Lennon surviving being shot, and he goes on and he's still alive at the end of the second season. He's not a character in the show, but you get the idea that something has changed in the world that allows him to survive, whether it's better medical technology or just the butterfly effect, changing how things are. Another thing you see is electric cars in the early 80s. You see someone plugging their car up at NASA. It's moving things forward a decade or two. It's not dramatic change, but it's showing that this drive for research and scientific development is affecting the real world, and it's not just contained within NASA. For All Mankind is available on Apple TV. If you don't have it, it is definitely worth getting a trial subscription to see this show. It starts out a bit slow, but I think as the characters kind of get built up and as they develop the characters and the drama and situations they're in, it really gets better as the show goes along. And as far as mistakes and accidents happening, the show does a good job of, oops, something broke. We got to send a rocket to fix it so that these guys can be rescued. Oops, something on that one breaks. So it's kind of a rolling drama is that one thing builds upon another. And it's all small things that are small mistakes that someone might miss if they're rushing things. Now, the show has a extended gap between season 1 and season 2. And season 2 really ramps up the Cold War. Season 2 really ramps up what's going on in the Cold War. You see a lot more of the Russians and their interactions with the American astronauts and the conflicts between the two governments and the two space programs. And you get to see some of the chicken that goes on where the American side offers to do a joint space mission and the Russians accept because they don't want to look bad for turning it down. But neither side really wants to do it. They just don't want to look bad to the world for turning it down and appearing to not be a team player. The second season takes place during the Reagan presidency. You get to see a lot of what's going on in the Cold War. You get to see those heads being butted against each other between the American government and the Russian government and the two space agencies. You see the astronauts on the moon coming into contact more and more, and the crises that causes. I've read a lot about the spy game and the Cold War espionage, and I really loved this part of the second season because they really captured the mistrust each side had for another and really transfer that to the storyline that they have put in place. So let me know, have you seen For All Mankind? What do you think? Comment below, subscribe, and come back for more Are You Baking?